All right, Rabbi, good morning, Guten Chodesh, Schos Baruch Hashem, to be able to begin Adar Beis, Baruch Hashem, with all of you this morning. Begin by thanking, I apologize for my voice. I'm sorry, try our best, Metzia Hashem. So thank you to all of our sponsors for this morning. Share to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for Adar Beis, those mishpachos who sponsor all of the shiurim and drashos for the entire month. We thank the Schwartzbaum family for dedicating all the Shimon Drashos in memory of Rabbi Aaron Schwartzbaum, Aaron Yosef ben Meir Zichron Livracha, Leah's soul in the schus of her daughter Ilana Bas Esther's successful surgery and complete refuah shalima, and for the safe return of all of our hostages. Maya Hoffman in memory of her father, Ruvain ben Emmanuel, and in the merit of the Hatzlacha, health and joy for her entire family. So beautiful, Shulamit, Avram, Mariasha, Tzivya, Barak Rafael, and Dora. Beautiful. Our week of learning sponsors today: Paul and Kathy Pollack in the Soldier for Shlima for Mr. Jack Levy, Yaakov ben Italea, who is undergoing surgery, Ira Miriam Grossman, in celebration of their first anniversary of making Aliyah. Incredible. Michael Turniansky, in memory of his brother Alan Turniansky, Avram Yitzchok ben Shimon Yaakov. We hope that in the merit, and of course, again, we dedicate our learning the Ilui Nishmas Major Amishar ben David, who fell in battle defending Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. Our pastries are sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Eric Schaefer. Beautiful. Again, in honor of. Does he know that he's doing a second week in a row? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, got it. I thought maybe we got his credit card on file, and that's it. You know, once that happens, all right. Yeah. They're also dedicating the social hall, by the way. It's so. And pastry sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Eric Schaefer, dedicated in honor of Eric's mother, Rus Bas Avram, who imbues her children and grandchildren with Yirah Shamayim, Avas Hashem, and teaches them Gemilos Chasodim and Lashon Hatov. Wow, absolutely beautiful. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamos will have an aliyah, the families will have an nechama. We shall all be zochem Metzia Hashem to be able to appreciate our mothers as much as Eric does his. And halabai Metzia Hashem, it should be a beautiful month truly mishenichnas adar marbin b'simcha, both on a personal level and as well as for all of Klal Yisrael. And I want to give a special welcome back to Sammy Asterson. I didn't give him a welcome back on Friday, but. Yeah, I did not welcome him back on Friday. Right, so welcome. You were a couple of minutes late. I'm not gonna lie. Whatever. I'm just saying. Yeah, I can't stop him. If I stop in the middle, then I'm gonna embarrass you, right? Like I did just now, right? So a very special welcome for those of you who don't know. Sammy spent the last couple of weeks in Eretz Yisrael, using his professional skill set as a physical therapist, being able to help those injured in battle, soldiers returning from battle. There was actually a beautiful news clip which I'm going to post on the Daf Yomi chat a little bit later today, highlighting some of Sammy's work. It's absolutely incredible. Absolutely. So Sammy, on behalf of the entire share, first of all, tremendous source of nachas and halavai. Your love for Am Yisrael, your commitment to Am Yisrael and to Eretz Yisrael, should be a schus for your mishpacha for many years to come. All right, so with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Yud Aleph 11, and we are picking up in Metzia Hashem at the Mishnah. The Mishnah says as follows: 11a. Mishnah. So it says the Mishnah, Ra Osan Ratzin Achamitz. If you did not get to the Mishnah yesterday, that is not my problem. Right? Chevra, come on. Daf Yomi is not about spoon feeding. What do you know? When you saw, come on. If someone were to ask you, when I read yesterday, where are we starting on Sunday? Where's Silver going to start? What would you say? Right? Mishnah. No, you would not say 10b. Maish, you weren't here yesterday. All right, I'm just saying. All right. Maish, you are off. You are off today. I'm telling you. It's a 10b. No, you would have said the Mishnah, 11a. That's where we start. So Chevra, if you end off earlier than the Mishnah, what's your avoda? Your avoda is a little homework. That's it. Come on. Says the Mishnah. So let's say now watch this. Very interesting case here. So let's say, for argument's sake, I'm standing by my field. And what happens? I see Reuven and Shimon by my field, and they're going ahead and they are running after a lost object. Or achar tzvi shavar. We'll say tzvi shavar means an injured deer. Meaning the idea over here is injured deer, meaning it can't run fast, and therefore there is a strong possibility of them being able to overtake it. Achar gozlos shelo parcho, or after birds that have not yet begun to fly. V'amar. So I'll say, so just you appreciate like the image over here. Right, so I'm standing by my field. Okay, these items do not belong to me. Right, so there is a lame deer hobbling across my field. There are pigeons that have not yet begun to fly that are walking across my field. They're on my field, and I see Reuven and Shimon now running into my field to capture these items. These items are hefker, and therefore, again, Reuven and Shimon have the right to capture them. As I see this, I say to myself, you know what? Zachsa li sadai. Let my field acquire these items on my behalf. So I figure I'm going to chaparain, right? I'm no different than these guys, right? At the end of the day, again, if they could acquire it because it's hefker, I want to acquire it as well with my chatzar. So what's the halacha? Zachsalo. The halacha is what say works. It works. Ultimately, again, my field has the ability to acquire these items on my behalf. However, so we'll say, so again, no, we'll see what the chiddush is over here. At first glance, this doesn't look like too much of a chiddush, right? What is the Mishnah teaching me? What is the Mishnah teaching me? Kinyan chatzar. Okay, that a chatzar is koda. Okay, so fine, we'll see what the chiddush is. Hayat tzvi ratz kedarko. However, we'll say same case. I'm standing by my field. Reuven and Shimon are running after. Right, or for that matter, even if they're not running after, right? But ultimately, there is a deer sprinting through my field, or there are birds that have indeed begun to learn to fly, that are fluttering through my field, and I say, "Zachsli sadai," let my field acquire these animals on my behalf. Then what's the halacha? Lo amar klum. So we'll say. So again, you see the simple. What's the simple distinction? The simple distinction is, remember again, in case one, what's happening over here? They're injured. So because they're injured or can't fly, therefore by definition, there's a certain level of immobility that exists that almost allows chatzar to act. In case number two, these deer, right, or the birds, they're just flying through. So because they're just flying through, there's no ability for kinyan chatzar to be able to go ahead and truly acquire. All right, so we'll say, so fine. Now let's analyze. I'm Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, but it's a really interesting case. So Bahu Sha'omid B'tzad Tzadeu. So we'll say, so here we go. So here we go. So it comes along Rabbi Yehuda, says the name of Shmuel. Says Rabbi the name of Shmuel that when does this work? Now, also remember, we're referencing case number one. Case number one, just one more time. I'm standing by my field, and what do I see in my field? I see a crippled deer or birds that don't yet know how to fly, right? And therefore, what's happening? Reuven and Shimon are running in, trying to scoop up those animals for themselves. Okay, I say in that moment, my chatzar should acquire this, and Mishnah says it works. Comes along Rabbi Yehuda, the name of Shmuel, and qualifies this ruling in a very important way and says it works. When does it work? When does it work? If ultimately, again, you are standing by the side of your field. In other words, you have to be standing by the side of your field in order to activate the kinyan chatzar. Now, I will say, here's what's interesting about this. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, before we get to Rashi, I have the tiknila sadehu, but I don't understand, why do I have to be standing by the side of my field? But say kinyan chatzar works whether or not I'm standing by the side of my field. So why do I have to be there? The Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, chatzero shel adam konesh shelo midaito. Rabbi say chatzar of a person could acquire on their behalf even without their knowledge. In other words, we have this concept in halacha. We found it many times where again, if I have a chatzar, someone throws something into my chatzar, right? My chatzar could acquire on my behalf even without my knowledge. So if chatzar could acquire without my knowledge, then why do I have to be standing by the side of my chatzar in order for the chatzar to go ahead and acquire? In order for the chatzar to go ahead and acquire the crippled deer or the pigeons that can't fly. I will say, by the way, I'll just mention just as an aside, right? What's the paradigmatic example of chatzar kana shelo midaito? When you think about that, get. You redeemed yourself. Good. Excellent. Right? Excellent. Right? Get. Right? Get. Get is the paradigm. Now, we're going to come back to get in just a little bit. Even though get is the paradigm, even though the truth is we're going to see get's not really a good paradigm, because remember, again, a get could be given how? Even bal karcha, even against their will. But again, get. I will say, it's interesting to think about this concept that a chatzar could be koneh shalom midas. And I think it's part of a theme that we saw come up a number of times. We saw it come up in Chassidus on Thursday night. We saw it come up on Daf on Friday morning. The metaphorical, or perhaps the Musar Haskell meaning of Chatzar Koneh Shalom Midas, I will say is, you could have your Chatzar, someone throws into your Chatzar, something into your Chatzar, you're not even aware of it, yet your Chatzar acquires it. I will say, a lot of times in life, there are things which leave an impact on us, even if we're not fully aware, fully cognizant, or even fully willing to absorb them. Whatever your chatzar absorbs. So right, this happens all the time in life. I allow myself to be influenced by this, exposed to this, experience this. And again, I go through life thinking that it's not going to impact me. The Gemara says, chatzar koneh shelo midaito. Whatever is in the proximity of your chatzar, it's yours. Whatever you allow yourself to be exposed to in life, whatever experiences you allow yourself to be a part of in life, or even the experiences you don't allow yourself to be a part of in life, but the experiences foisted upon you, everything we undergo in life, my chatzar is koneh, and it leaves a dramatic impact on who and what I am. We'll say, and this cuts both ways. On one hand, what it has to do is it has to sensitize us to the fact that we do have to be so careful what we allow ourselves to be exposed to. The influences we allow inside of our home, the influences we allow inside of our souls, the influences we allow inside of our eyes, inside of our heads. Chatzar shel adam koneh shelo midaito. At the end of the day, your chatzar acquires everything. But sometimes things happen in life where I didn't choose circumstances and they were foisted upon me. It's important to understand that those circumstances also changed me. But sometimes we look at ourselves and we're not the people we thought we would want to be in life. And we'll say sometimes sorry. Had an alarm going off at 8:20 in the morning. I don't remember the last time I got up at 8:20 in the morning. Okay, sorry. Okay, good. Any events, we'll say, so therefore again, there are many times in life that halacha l'maisa, we go ahead and we have these experiences that fundamentally change us. And we wake up one day and we're different people. We're just different people. And it's important to understand that that's the concept of chatzar shel adam koneh shelo midaito. Whatever experience comes in, whatever comes into your personalistic chatzar, whether it's the influences you allow, or even sometimes the circumstances that are foisted upon you, koneh lo. Ultimately, again, they become part of who and what you are. So sometimes you can't choose the influences foisted upon you, but you absolutely can choose the things that you allow yourself to be exposed to. Incredible. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. So back to the Gemara. So I don't understand. So why is it, I believe it's the name of Shmuel, that you have to be standing by the side of your chatzar in order for the chatzar to acquire on your behalf? But why? Chatzar shel adam koneh shelo midaito. We'll say, watch this. This is really interesting. How do you need to be chatzar mishtameres? We'll say, when is that so? That is so ultimately, again, by a guarded chatzar. When does your chatzar have the ability to acquire on your behalf, even without your knowledge? That's when it is a chatzar mishtameres. Chatzar mishtameres means a secure chatzar. Secure chatzar, right? Gated or somehow other guarded. Ava chatzar sheni mishtameres. I will say, if the chatzar is not guarded, chatzar is not secured, then I omed b'tzad sadeu in, ilo lo. Then I will say, if you're standing there, then the chatzar could acquire on your behalf. If you're not standing there, the chatzar can't acquire on your behalf. So we'll say, so Rashi points out over here, first Rashi in the Gemara, I omed b'tzad sadeu in, ta'achshav hi mishtameres al yado. So we'll say, this is interesting. What does your standing next to an unguarded chatzar do? What does it do? It makes it guarded. In other words, the act of standing next to your chatzar makes it a chatzar mishtameres. So I will say, let's pause here for just a moment, because this is actually a very profound halacha that has ramifications and implications in many areas. So essentially what the Gemara is teaching me is like this. Number one, there's something called the kinyan chatzar, right? Which means that which we know, we've dealt with this many, many years, my chatzar has the ability to go ahead and acquire on my behalf. Fine. Now, what the Gemara is suggesting is, Chatzar, by the way, even has the ability to acquire even without your knowledge. When does the Chatzar have the ability to acquire without your knowledge? Only when it's mishtameres. Only when it's guarded. Only when it's guarded. But if it's or secured. But if it's not secured, I will say, then halacha l'maisa, you need to be standing there. Your act of standing next to the chatzar gives it essentially the din of a guarded chatzar. Now, what I want to point out is what really comes out of here is as follows. The truth is, you can say this is a case of knowledge, right? In other words, look at the Mishnah's case. I'm standing there, right? I'm standing there, and I want my chatzar to acquire the crippled deer, right? Or to acquire the pigeons. So we'll say, so you see, das by itself is not enough. It requires das and proximity. Das and proximity. In order for a chatzar, really what it comes down to is like this. In order for a chatzar to acquire something, the chatzar has to be secure. If the chatzar is not secure, ultimately, again, it does not have the ability to acquire. Now, okay, so therefore, again, plugging this back into our Mishnah, therefore, again, Rabbi says, name of Shmuel, I'm standing by my chatzar, which makes it a secure chatzar. I see the deer limping along or the pigeons that can't fly. I say, let my chatzar acquire it. Shalom Yisrael. We're done. But I said, there's a tremendous Musar Haskell in this also, that only a chatzar that is guarded has the ability to acquire. See, I will say, what does this mean? See, something comes into your chatzar, something beautiful. If you don't have the ability to retain it, right? If you don't, what does it mean that it's secure? Secure means that there's the possibility of retention. So if something beautiful comes into your chatzar, but there's no possibility of retention, then ultimately the chatzar can't acquire it. And it's an incredible metaphor in life as well. We'll say, so sometimes in life we have experiences of Kedusha. What's the problem? What's the challenge with experiences of Kedusha? Easy come, easy go. If you want your Kedusha experiences to be meaningful, you must find a mechanism of retention. The chatzar, the personalistic chatzar, has to be mishtameres. Otherwise, you go through life and you have these beautiful experiences, and they just simply flow through me. I've quoted this a number of times. The Rebbe says that when a person has a moment of inspiration, I've quoted this many times, he says, what should you do? What should you do? He says, open up a chumash and read a pasuk. And he says, even if it's just Vayedaber Hashem al Moshe Lemar. Right? Why? Because like this, you've taken the spiritual energy and you've plugged it into something concrete. I've done something with it. I learned the pasuk of chumash. But if I don't do anything with it, if I don't find a way to retain it, if the chatzar is not mishtameres, then simply again stuff just passes through. Only a secure chatzar is able to acquire. Only if the personalistic chatzar has a mechanism of retention do the spiritual and holy experiences of life last. Otherwise, it just simply passed through. But say this is why in general, whenever we have incredible and overwhelming spiritual experiences, the most important thing you could do is make a Kabbalah. Take something upon yourself. Right? Why? Because what does a Kabbalah do? Kabbalah says, I just had this experience. Here's how I'm going to plug it into my life. Here's how and again, it could be a very small Kabbalah. It doesn't have to be anything dramatic or heroic. But the smallest things, but if you don't take the energy and plug it into something concrete, just simply dissipates. The Gemara goes weiter. So we'll say, from around this concept, that if you have an unguarded chatzar, unsecured chatzar, that if you're standing next to it, that makes it a chatzar mishtameres, and therefore it could acquire. But if you don't stand next to it, it doesn't make it into a chatzar mishtameres. So we'll say a very interesting case here. This time you learned in a brayso. Listen to this. Person was standing in the city, and he says, Yodea ani she'omer sheishli besada, polim shechachuho, lo yehi shechacha. So we'll say, now watch this. I'm standing in the city, and as I'm standing in the city, I say to myself, you know what? I remember that my workers left behind a bundle in the field, and I don't want it to be shechacha. Right? Because once remember again, the halacha is that whether you're harvesting your wheat or your workers are harvesting their wheat, if they leave something behind, it becomes right like at shichacha, depending on what they leave behind. So now what happens over here? In this case, I'm standing in the city and I say, you know what? I know that my workers forgot something. I don't want it to be shichacha. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, Omer, sheyesh li bisada, shenachtiv shamidaiti, v'samachti ala polim shevi'uhu, upolim shachu. So Rashi adds in a little bit over here of perish, important perish. I left a bundle in the field. I purposely must remember again, shichacha, if you just leave a bundle but you know you left it there, that's not shichacha, right? It's only shichacha if what? If you forget it, right? If you actively forget it. And we'll even see more parameters of this in just a moment. So in this case over here, I know that I left a bundle for my workers to gather in. And now I know my workers forgot it. My workers forgot it. So I say, I don't want this to be shichacha. I don't want it to be shichacha. So I'll say, so lo yeh shichacha. So I'll say, now here's what's interesting. Rashi adds in one more. What do you mean lo yeh shichacha? Now I'll say, so what I'm really saying is like this. In the event that I forget about it between now and the time that I get back to the field, I don't want it to be shichacha. So I'll say, see what's happened over here? I intentionally left the bundle in the field for the workers to take in. The workers forgot it. The workers forgot it. I know they forgot it. I say I don't want it to be shechacha, but I'm really saying is, if I now forget about it, I don't want it to be shechacha. Okay? So what's the halacha? So the Gemara says, you might have thought that this doesn't turn into shikha if I forget it. Therefore the pasuk says you forgot a bundle in the field. Only if you forget it in the field, but not in the city. So the Gemara says that statement is inherently contradictory. Amrit yachal lo yeshichacha amahav shicha. Rabbi say the way that it's phrased is you might have thought that this is not shichacha, which is the Gemara telling us that it is shicha. So Rabbi say, so just to be clear, the Gemara seems to be saying that in this case, I left a bundle in the field intentionally with the intention for my workers to go ahead and pick it up. I then go to the city. I hear the workers didn't pick it up. I say it shouldn't be shichacha, even in the event that I forget about it. The Gemara seems to indicate that if I forget about it, it is shichacha. And then the Gemara quotes a pasuk that seems to indicate that shichacha is only in the field and not in the city. So which one is it? So the Gemara says, Amrit lachol lo yeshicha amav shicha. So on one hand he said it shouldn't be shicha, but it's clear from here that it is shicha. The nasiv le gemara besada v'shachachta v'lo ba'ir. Yet we quote the pasuk that says shicha is only in the city. Sorry, only in the field and not in the city. Ama lo av'shicha. So it sounds like it's not shicha. So which one is it? Elalav hakir. What it means to say. Here we go. Besada shachuach meikara hav'shicha. So most of the way it works is like this. It's actually really a fascinating halacha about shikha that's actually codified in the Rambam, Hilchos Matnos Aniyim Parakeh Halacha Hey. Parakeh Halacha Bey, sorry. So listen to this. Halacha Gomer. Besada shachuach meikara havishicha. Most of the way it works is like this. In the field, if you forget produce there, and from the beginning you forgot about it, that's called shichacha. Zachar ulebasov shachuach. What happens if what? What happens if you first remember? In other words, we'll say, remember means sometimes you put something down, it's not forgotten, right? I'm coming back to it. So what happens if you first remembered it, Zachar, ulebasov shachuach, and then ultimately again, then afterwards I forgot about it, ain't shichacha. There's no shichacha. So we'll say what the Gemara is espousing is like this. The way shichacha works in a field is it's only called shichacha if what? If what? If it's forgotten from the beginning. Right? In other words, that I harvested it and I just totally forgot about it. I bundled it and I just totally forgot about it. But if there was a moment where you remembered it, right, and then you subsequently forgot it, that's not called shechacha in the field. So the Gemara says, my timer, what's the reason? Oh. He'll say, watch this. Why? Because since I'm standing in my field or by my field, therefore what Rabbi saying? Because I remembered it for a moment, right? What happened? My chutzner acquired it on my behalf. So even though I subsequently forgot it, it doesn't matter because my field already acquired it on my behalf. So we'll say, I just want to point out, pause here for just a second. Remember, why are we learning about shechacha? Remember again, we'll say, what point are we trying to prove over here? We're trying to prove Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel's point that essentially when you have an unsecured chutzner, the way to secure it is how? Stand in proximity, stand next to it. So the Gemara says, where do we find this concept? Here it is. Here it is, I will say. I'm gathering wheat in my field, right? The halacha is if you forget a bundle of wheat, that bundle is called shichacha, it belongs to the poor. It belongs to the poor. Okay. So Rabbi say, so now watch this. So now watch this. So now what happens? I'm bundling my wheat. I see that bundle. I'm like, okay, I'm going to come to it later. And then I forget about it. So Rabbi say, what's ta'alacha? Ta'alacha is, it's mine. It's mine, it's not shechacha. Why isn't it shechacha? It must be that since I was standing in the field together with this bundle, my chutzner acquired the bundle on my behalf. What do you see? And therefore, even if I subsequently forget it, it doesn't matter. It's already been acquired for me. So what do you see from here? What do you see from here? That an unsecured chutzner, when the owner is standing there, suddenly becomes secure. Beautiful. Beautiful. Aval be'ir. So we're going to finish out the shikha conversation. But if you're in the city, if you do zachar, olubasov shachua chavi shechacha. Rabbi say, if I'm standing in the city, interestingly enough, and I remembered the bundle, but then I subsequently forgot about the bundle, it's shechacha. Right? Why? My taima delese gabe delazachibe. Rabbi makes a lot of sense. Why? Because I'm not there. I'm not by the field. So because I'm not by the field, therefore again, my presence cannot activate the acquisitory power of the chutzner. Incredible, Rabbi say. So this is our raya to Rabbi Yehuda's concept that ultimately, and Rabbi say, so again, there are two types of chutzner mishtameres, right? A typical chutzner mishtameres could be like a gated chutzner, and then if a chutzner is physically unsecure, right? Physically unsecure. Insecure? Right, because an insecure chutzner sounds like he has like mental health issues, right? He's really not feeling good about himself, right? So it's like an unsecured chutzner. So again, my standing there, my physical presence, by definition, makes it secure, and that's what I both say. That's why again, if I'm in the city and I remember, oh, you know what? I left a bundle for the workers. The workers forgot it. I don't want it to be shicha. Then I forget it. If I forget it, it does become shicha. Why? Because since I'm in the city and not by my chutzner, I can't activate the acquisitory power of my chutzner through my personalistic proximity. By the way, what a sentence. What a sentence. I can't say it. I can't say it again. The Gemara says as follows. So the Gemara goes weiter. So the Gemara says, Mimai. So first of all, the Gemara says, I don't understand. How can you bring this as a proof? Dilma, Gzer Sakosafi, Tibisadin Havishicha, Birla Havishicha. Maybe this is just all based on a pasuk. You're learning this out Kinyan Chatzar, but maybe at the end of the day it's really just based ultimately again on the pasuk that in the sud, in the field, there is the ability to have shicha, and in the city there is no shicha. Armekra lo sashav lakachto l'rabo shichas hayir. Therefore, the pasuk comes along to say, do not return to take it, and that includes even if there was shichacha in the city. We'll say, just to be clear, shichacha in the city means the owner's in the city and the owner forgot about the bundle. Okay, the Gemara says, no. Haimi boile lelav. No, because we'll say we need it to create a lav for the shechacha. Im keinei makra lo sikachenu. My lo sashuv. So we'll say if that's the case, let the pasuk say don't take it. What does it mean don't return? Lerabos shechachas ha'ir comes to include shechachas. Yes, the Gemara is suggesting maybe this distinction between shechacha in the city versus shechacha in the field doesn't have to do with the ability of personalistic proximity to activate acquisitory power of a chutzner, but rather again maybe it's just based on the pasuk. It's just based on the pasuk, to which the Gemara says. But the Gemara says, no. Vakati mi baile. No, because you need the pasuk for something else. Vakati baile lichidisnan shalafanav ein shechacha shalacharav yesh shechacha. Sheva says shuba bal tashav. So this is interesting. No, because the pasuk is necessary to teach you something else, which is shechacha only applies to that which is in back of you, not to that which is in front of you. In other words, we'll say, let's say again, I forget about, we'll say sometimes in life, I forget about the things that are right in front of my face, right? So what happens? So I'm in the field. I'm just, my mind is in a million different places. So what happens? So I see the bundle of wheat right in front of me, and I forget about it. See, you might have thought that this would be shecha. So the Gemara says, no. But say that's why the Torah uses lashon ultimately again of lo sashuv. Do not go back. Shechacha only applies to a bundle of wheat behind you, does not apply to a bundle of wheat in front of you. Ze'aklal. Kol shuba bal tashuv shechacha, kol shema bal tashuv ein shechacha. I'll say it's beautiful. This is the rule. Anything for which you have to turn around is subject to the halachas of shichacha, but anything that you don't have to turn around is not subject to shichacha. So I'll say, but this could be a very, I would imagine that like in the farming time, this could be a very shayach halacha, right? The person's harvesting, a person's gathering all the bundles, there's a lot going on, and you just forget like about the bundles that are just sitting right in front of you. You might have thought there's shichacha. Lo Sashav teaches me only literally the stuff actually behind me is considered to be shichacha, but the stuff in front of me is not shichacha. Okay, but Rav Ashi Amakra Yihya l'Rabos shichacha sayir. And Rav Ashi said the lashon of Yihya also comes to include shichacha sayir. So we'll say, so therefore, just we're done with shichacha for now. So I'll say, so again, just interestingly enough, the Gemara does have, so the reason we brought up this entire shichacha was really just to prove the point ultimately for Rav Yehuda, who said over in the name of Shmuel, that when you have an unsecured chutzner, the way to secure it ultimately again is with physical proximity. That if the owner is standing by it, and therefore kind of looping it back to the Mishnah, that in the Mishnah's case, I'm standing by my chutzner, I see a crippled deer or pigeons that can't fly hobbling along. Reuven and Shimon are running after to acquire for themselves because it's hefker. I say, let my chutzner acquire it on my behalf. That works as long as what? As long as what? I'm standing there. I'm standing there. Shabbos says, so again, the Gemara seemed to put a good argument out that halacha l'maisa. One can learn that out from Shichacha, although it's possible that the halachos of Shichacha themselves are just governed by the different drashas in the psukim. Okay, let's go ahead. Both say, what's the takeaway from Shichacha? What's the takeaway from Shichacha? The takeaway from Shichacha, both say, is that here, remember, we'll say it's all about yisodos that we could isolate. Shichacha, if you remember one thing from Shichacha, this distinction between the city and the field is interesting. Shichacha only applies to stuff that is behind you. It doesn't apply to stuff that is in front of you. And I will say, what a ridiculously amazing Musar Haskell. I will say, what do you have to do with the stuff that is behind you? What do you have to do with it? Shichacha. I will say, how much time do we spend in life holding on to the pain of past failures? How much time do we spend in life reliving, if only I would have done this, I would have gone here, I would have taken this job, I would have, did all these different things. And we spend our life literally again looking in the rear view mirror. So I will say what's incredible is that the halacha is lo sashuv. You forgot the bundle? We'll say, we all forget bundles. We'll say, who amongst us in life doesn't have like that bundle? Oh my gosh, that was such a good bundle. How great my life could have been, or at least so I think. Right? I could have made this, I could have done this, I had this opportunity. Okay, the bundle's gone. The bundle's behind me. The bundle's behind me. Once the bundle's behind me, ultimately, lo sashuv. We'll say, that's shichacha. You got to forget about it, and you got to move forward. But here's the incredible part. There's no shichacha with the bundles in front of you. So I will say, here's the problem. If you spend too much time focusing on the bundles behind you, you will forget all about the beautiful bundles that are right in front of you. So the Ribono Shel Olam says, let the bundles of the past, let the bundles behind you, lo sashav, let it go. My dehava hava, what was, move forward. The bundles in front of you, those are beautiful. Those are great. Don't lose out on those as well. Incredible. Okay, let's go back there. Rav Ashi, sorry. So we'll say Ula said, Ula echoes the same idea as Rabbi Yehuda, namely that the chutzner works in the case of the Mishnah when I'm standing by the side of my chutzner. Okay, so we'll say, so again, we're just adding more people to Team Rabbi Yehuda, right? So Ula's on board, Rabbi Bar Chana's on board, that the chutzner in the Mishnah only works, my chutzner only works to acquire if I am standing right there. Rabbi Abba Ula, Rabbi Allah raised the Kashla, was a great case, his great case. There was a story of Rabbi Gamliel and the elders who were traveling on a boat. Now we'll say, I'm Rabbi Gamliel, so we'll say, so now watch this. So first I'll take a look. No, not yet. I'm Rabbi Gamliel. Iser Sha'ani Asid, Lamud, Nason Yoshua. So we'll say, okay, so let me tell you this a little bit outside. Look at Rashi. Iser Sha'ani Asid Lamud, Niskar Shalo Iser Masrosav, Vok Shalo, Umir La Astra Masherosham. Okay, so we'll say, let me give you some context over here. The Rabbi Gamliel is on a boat with a bunch of Rabbanim. This might be a great idea for our next siyum, by the way, right? A cruise, right? Probably not, right? It's Kosher Rika presenting, right? The greatest of the. So now what happened? So the Rabbanim are on a boat together. Rabbi Gamliel realized that he left his produce untithed. So Rabbi says, so what does he do? He quickly goes ahead and tithes it. Now, I want to just point out something incredibly amazing, that there's a whole discussion. We're not going to do it together now, but Tosas, the bottom Tosas over here, has this entire discussion about why did Rabbi Gamliel have to essentially dole out tithes on the boat? And remember, again, there's a couple of questions. Number one, why did he have to tithe everything? Number two, why did he have to tithe in this type of specific way? So Tosas first wants to say, well, because Rabbi Gamliel was concerned that there's a chazakah, there's a presumption that a Talmid Chacham does not leave untithed produce. So Tosas brings down, the only problem with that is that's true, but that refers to his produce after he dies. That if you find, in other words, if you find in the estate of a Talmid Chacham produce, we assume that it was tithe. But Pashas Rabbi Gamliel was going on a boat journey, not that for 14 years. He was going for some amount. So Tosas has a whole arichos on this, but I just want to point out something absolutely amazing, even though I'm not going to give you the depth of it. Tosas says, this situation happened in a leap year, in an Adar Beis. I'm sorry. I feel like I should drop the mic, right? Just like, right? So it happened in a leap year. So again, you'll take a look in Tosas. Tosas has a whole arichos about this, but he says this whole episode centers around a leap year. I would say just absolutely trouble. I would say sometimes, like we kind of wonder to ourselves, like, all right, I'm a little bit tired. Like what am I doing? What am I doing? Somebody just came over to me last night and it went on a whole. You ever meet the anti-Daf Yomi people? Anti-Daf Yomi people can't quite figure that. Interesting breed of people, right? You would think that like we're learning like New Testament daily, like New Testament Yomi. Like I'm like it's Torah. Like it's not like we're like learning like Luke or something. I don't know. Like I was like, he was like, you're going like, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know this. I said, you're right, in general, I don't know what I'm talking about. I agree, okay, I'll be macabre at that point. It was going the whole thing. And I'll say, sometimes like, when people come off, I always admire like and inherently I'm not like a confident person. So I always admire like very confident people who like absolutely 1000% believe every single thing that they're saying. So this guy literally gave me like a mishaberach about Daf Yomi on Motzei Shabbos, and like it rattles you a little bit. Like you think to yourself, I don't know. So maybe so he's talking about different learning programs where you learn a lot slower and a lot more methodically and a lot this. I was thinking about it a little bit. Like I was, and I'll tell you last night. Then I'm home last night preparing the daf, and I saw this Tosas, and I said, Ribono Shalom, thank you for the kiss, thank you for the hug, thank you for the embrace. Thank you for the chizuk. You're right. You're absolutely right. Maybe there are other programs where you can learn a little bit slower, right? And again, you certainly have a lot more time for chazara. And again, it's not an either or. It's really not an either or. We'll have to think about it, because it was macabre what this person said. Maybe instituting another program as well, in addition to Amud Yomi. I would say, so again, there's a place, but I would say there's nothing that compares with swimming through Shas, and it's not the doggy paddle, right? It's not the doggy paddle. Mamish, like we are taking major strokes every single day. And you're right, sometimes we have to give up a little bit on the depth. But when you learn a Gemara about a leap year on Rosh Chodesh Adar Beis, it doesn't get better than this in life. It's the kiss of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In any event, so watch this. So says Rabbi Gamliel said, I'm going to separate 1/10. He was referring over here to Meiser Rishon. He was giving to Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua Bar Chanina was a Levi. So I'm going to give my Meiser Rishon to Yoshua ben Chananya. And also the area upon which, the land upon which the Meiser is situated, I'm going to rent to him. So he was giving him both produce and land. We'll say then there's another 10th, because we'll say it was a meiser on a year. The additional 10th that I'm going to give out, Nasul Akiva ben Yosef. I'm giving to Akiva ben Yosef. We'll say, who's Akiva ben Yosef? Rabbi Akiva. We'll say, I just want to point out, by the way, can you imagine being on this boat Can you imagine being on this boat? Rabbi Gamliel, and you hear the way he referred, he's not being disparaging. Rabbi Gamliel was the ranking sage. See, he calls Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya Yoshua, and he calls Rabbi Akiva. Right? Can you imagine, right? What it would have been like to be on this boat with these Rabbanim? So again, he says, I'm going to give the Ma'aser to Rabbi Akiva. And I will say, Rabbi Akiva was the Gabbai Tzedakah. So he wasn't giving the Ma'aser Ani to Rabbi Akiva. Well, he was, but he was giving it to Rabbi Akiva to dispense to the Aniyim. And the area upon which the Ma'aser Ani is situated is also given to Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbi Shmuel says, one second. So we'll say, now, sounds like what happened over here. He gave them the tithes and he gave them the land. Right, the karka. What was the point of the karka? What was the point of the karka? Kinyan Chatzar. Now we'll say, what's the problem? I don't understand. They're on a boat. Right? No, it's not a metaphor, right? They're on a boat, right? They're literally on a boat, which means that they're not standing by the chatzar. Well, we just said that in order for a chatzar to acquire, ultimately, again, the person has to be standing by the side of the chatzar. So this is a kasha on Ula, kasha on Rabbi Huda, kasha on all the previous opinions. So the Gemara says, no. So the Gemara was listening to this. So he said to him, Dami haimi rabbanan, kidelo gamri inchi shmaita. All right, so we'll say, so here it gets a little testy over here. Right? So Rabbi Abba was the one who asked this question on Ula. Ula said, Rabbi Abba, it's clear that you have not showed up one day to the base medrash, right? So I'll say that's I'll say, I've said this often. It's always interesting. Like on one hand, the teacher, you always want to say every single question. Oh, excellent question. And I'll say, so it could be that that's good for younger children to build up self-esteem. As we get older, one of the most important skill sets that we have to develop is the ability to think before we speak. Right? It's a muscle that we have to really exercise as often as possible. And so I'll say, so sometimes you see it throughout the Gemara that when someone asks a question that was felt to be like just a foolish question, the response is sharp and biting. It's not meant to insult, and it's not meant to degrade. It's meant to create a sense of responsibility, right? You're a Talmid Chacham, and as a Talmid Chacham, you have a responsibility to make sure that you're thinking before you speak. So Ula says, back to Rabbi Chama, Dami Hayish Bar Klo Gamishmaita, Kiasel Surah, Amali Achim Ula, this is what Ula said, Vahachi Os Veisei, Amali Hu Mirab Baradam Gamdiel, Metaltali Agav Mikar Kai Hikna Lahem. I will say it wasn't Kinyan Chatzar. It was Kinyan Agav. Wow. Okay, I will say. So essentially the Gemara says is like this, you're mixing up two kinyanim. So I will say, we thought that what was happening over here, we thought that what was occurring was like this, that Rabbi Gamliel was, let's say, giving the tithes to Rabbi Yeshua, to Rabbi Akiva, and what he was doing was he was giving them land, chatzar, and therefore again acquire the chatzar and acquire the produce or the tithe through Kinyan Chatzar. That's not what was happening. It wasn't Kinyan Chatzar. We'll say, what was it? It was Kinyan Agav. We'll say, what's Kinyan Agav? Agav literally means on the back of. Kinyan Agav means you could acquire A, and by acquiring A, you acquire B on the back of that item. So we'll say, so in this case over here, what Rabbi Gamliel is really doing is, he's giving them ownership on land. And the halacha is that when you acquire land, real property, you could acquire metaltalin on the back of, or by dint of, that real property, but it's not Kinyan Chatzar. It's even though it sounds similar, it's two different mechanistic frameworks. Incredible. Rabbi Zera Kibla, Rabbi Abba lo Kibla. Rabbi Zera accepted this interpretation. Rabbi Abba did not. Amarava, Shapir Avadilo Kibla. Truth is, it's good that Rabbi Abba did not accept this explanation. You know why? V'chilo hayalahem sudar liknos yemena bechalipin. Because it doesn't make any sense. We'll say it doesn't make any sense. Why would Rabbi Gamliel be makna the produce to them, the tithes to them, through agav? In other words, why the need for karka? There's a much easier mechanism. What's the much easier mechanism? So it's a chalipin. We just learned about chalipin last week, right? What's chalipin? Again, we do this by achasana, we do it by chametz. Let's just go with the classic idea that what happens, right? The makna, let's say the person selling the object goes ahead and, or I should say, Yeah, well, it doesn't really matter, right? Let's say party A, because it's a machlokes, whether or not to use kelev shel makna, kelev shel kona. But the idea is Rabbi Gamliel could have just given them like a handkerchief, let them lift up a handkerchief, and by acquiring the handkerchief, what do they acquire? They acquire ultimately, again, the produce. What do you have to start getting into karka? What do you have to start going ahead and getting into? In other words, the fact that he used karka, the Gemara wants to suggest, can't be agov, because if you're using agov, just use chalipin. It must have been that he was using karka as a form of chatzar. If he's using karka as a form of chatzar, that shows that chatzar works even if what? Even if the owner is not present. Ela tovas hana eina mamon liknos yemena bechalipin. Hachanami tovas hana eina mamon liknos al gabe karka. Shabbos say this is interesting. I'm sorry. Before we get to that, Shabbos say here's the difference. Chalipin is fascinating. Chalipin only works when you are acquiring or giving over an item of value. Rabbi say, remember again, Rabbi Gamliel has these tithes. Rabbi say, who owns the tithes? Who owns the tithes? Who owns the tithes? So ultimately, again, remember, so if it's Meiser, if Meiser is shown, the Levi owns that. Meiser Ani, the Ani owns that. Right? What does Rabbi Gamliel have? Rabbi Gamliel has Tovas Hana. What's Tovas Hana? Tovas Hana is the right to give the tithes to whoever you want. I will say that is not considered enough of a financial benefit to give over through Kinyan Chalipin. Kinyan Chalipin, right? Isn't that incredible? Kinyan Chalipin requires an exchange of something that has an actual financial value. Tovas Hana does not have enough of a financial value to be activated or ultimately to be transferred through Chalipin. Incredible. So the Gemara says, so I want to say the same thing. So I'll say, I want to say the same thing. Maybe again, Tovas Hana also doesn't have the ability to be transferred over Agav Karka. Velohi. Bosi, here's the difference. Matnos Kuna Nesina Ksivbo. Bosi, when it comes to Matnos Kuna, the Torah uses Lashon of Nesina, of giving over. Chalipin, Terach mekachu memkarhu. So we'll say chalipin is a mechanism that is used ultimately again for mekachu memkar, for commercial transactions, sales. Metaltlin agav mikarka nesina alimtihi. So we'll say this is very interesting. By matnos kahuna, the lashon is nesina, right? You have to give it over. We'll say for giving something over, Agav karka works. Karka will work. For chalipin, I will say, chalipin is a financial transaction, and therefore ultimately, again, it requires an item of value. So I will say, so therefore, again, the Gemara successfully neutralizes that objection. Rapapa says, Das acheres makna osan shayni. Okay, so Rapapa introduces now something totally different. Rapapa says it's not a fair comparison. But I'll say, in the case of Rabbi Gamliel is actively conveying ownership of something to someone else. We'll say, I just want to point out, if you notice again, what's happening in our Mishnah, right, where this whole discussion started. In this whole Mishnah, I am trying to acquire something from what? From Hefker, right? So I'm trying to use my chutzner to acquire something from Hefker. In the Rabbi Gamliel case, Rabbi Gamliel is actively trying to convey something, ownership, to another party. So Papa says, Das acheres makna osan shiny. When you have one party actively transferring to another party, Rabosai, Kinyan Chatzar could work even if what? Even if the owner of the Chatzar is not present. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Temra, from where do you know that? So the Gemara says, Disnan, Ra Osan Ratzin Achar HaMetzia. Right? What did our Mishnah say? Right? I'm standing by my Chatzar. I say Reuven and Shimon running after the deer, running after the pigeons. Right? And Rabbi Yochanan said in Yochanan, assuming that I could also run after these items and catch up with them. So I'll say, so they qualify this ruling saying that when I see these objects running through, or these animals running through my chatzar, I could acquire it as long as I could technically run after them and catch up to it. What happens if it was a matana? It wasn't hefker. Somebody was conveying ownership of something to me. So kibla minei Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana afapi sherat sacharin ve'ein magian. So what they said in that case, halacha l'maisa, even if you couldn't catch up with the deer with the pigeons, you would still acquire it. My time, what's the reason? Lav mishum dedas acheres makna osan. Shiny. It must be because of Osai that there's a difference ultimately again when someone else is conveying ownership to you. So Osai, so we're gonna pause over here. We're gonna pause over here for now. So Osai, so I just want to point out to you what the Gemara ended up with, so just to kind of trace the progression. So we started out with the Mishnah, right? Our Mishnah said that halacha l'maisa, I'm standing by my chutzner, I see a crippled deer or pigeons that can't fly, and I see people running after it to acquire it because it's hefker. I say, hey, I want that. Let my chutzner acquire it. What does the Mishnah say? say? It works. Rabbi Yehuda says the name of Shmuel qualifies that. When does it work? When does it work? As long as I'm standing there. My personalistic proximity ultimately, again, concretizes and solidifies the acquisitory capability of my chutzner. Ula backs that up. There's all but Shila that backs that up. We brought up the case of Shichacha to back up that concept as well. We're left with a problem though with the Rabbi Gamliel case, because Rabbi Gamliel is on a boat and Rabbi Gamliel is giving over tithes, right? Rabbi Shlomo ben Chananya, Meiser Rishon, Meiser Ani to Rabbi Akiva, and he's giving it to them through Kinyan Chatzar. But they're not standing by the field. To which the Gemara introduces us to another new fact, which is the only time that you require personalistic proximity to your chatzar to acquire is when the chatzar is acquiring from hefker. But if someone else is giving you something, then your chatzar has the ability to acquire on your behalf, even if you're not there. And I will say, just what's the logic of that? It's very simple. The logic is like this: when I am acquiring something from hefker, there's nothing pushing that object into my domain. As such, I need a greater pull in order to make it mine. When someone is conveying something to me, I both say there's two forces. What are the forces? Someone's pushing it in my direction, and I'm pulling it in my direction. Because there are those two forces, therefore the Gemara wants to posit, Kinyan Chatzar could work in that case, even if what? Even if I'm not standing. I will say, so we'll stop over here for today. We're going to pick up with this idea tomorrow. Both say, I'm going to be in Meretz Hashem. I'm hoping to leave for Eretz Yisrael time, and I hope to be remote with you this week in Meretz Hashem. For sure tomorrow. Keep you posted about the rest of the week as well, but it is my goal. This Gemara is too good. I'm on a selfish level. So we'll say, look forward to Meretz Hashem with all of you. Shkoyach.
Compared to Rabbi Abba, so I think there's maybe one more